Chapter 12. Things We Don't Think About. Gabe is pouting, Maxim says, as Will closes the airlock door behind him, having thankfully left the Berserker behind. Can't say I blame him. This mission just took kind of a dark turn. Will slips the earpiece back into a pocket on his jumpsuit. Let's put some distance between us and this nightmare. We can take our salvagers out to the far end of the flotilla. Maxim nods. I'll get us going. You go check on Gabe. He can see Will take a big breath and exhale, then nod. Can I come in? Will asks, as the door to engineering slides open. Of course, Captain. It is your ship. The engineering bot's voice comes from somewhere behind the main engine. How are you doing, big guy? That must have been rough to hear, back aboard the Berserker. Will takes a few tentative steps into the engineering space, letting the hatch close behind him. To be honest, Captain, it was nothing I have not encountered before. Except for a few minor outlying colonies, droids do not have civil rights. We are routinely tortured for sport and treated as property to be abused as desired, and discarded when too damaged for any use. As Will comes around the reactor, he sees a space he doesn't recall ever seeing before. It is a small maintenance workstation that's been reconfigured into what he can only call a bedroom, though sans bed. Gabe is sitting on a bench against the far wall, the glow from the reactor illuminating his new, more expressive face. Sitting down next to his robotic friend, Will rests his hand on Gabe's shoulder. I didn't know how bad it was. He shrugs. I guess I never really paid any attention. Before meeting you. Droids were always just in the background, going about their business. I never considered... You would not be the only one. Few consider my kind anything but tools with minds. Gabe turns to look at Will, his eyes clearly expressing sadness. Damn, his new face really does convey his emotional state, Will thinks. Will pauses for a moment. I guess it was easy for me to not see it. Langsham didn't have any droids on his crew, and most of the places we went, droids were a luxury few could afford. He thinks a bit more. I think my first real encounter with droids came after I was on my own. He shrugs. But then I had other things on my mind. Gabe says nothing, so Will continues. We'll fix this. We've got some clout with Xarrix. Maybe they can help put pressure on the GC. Start getting the conversation started. Hell, we have some clout with the GC too, though I have no idea how to apply it. That is kind of you, Captain. I do not have much hope of anything like that succeeding. Droids have been a disposable workforce in the GC for over 150 standard years. I do not see that changing anytime soon. That was before I got involved. Will smiles and pats his friend's leg. Also, at least using Earth as a model, change like that is slow. Often way too slow. He smiles again. What say we get this job done, get paid, and never see Xarrix or the nutjob Gorilla again, and set about fighting some civil rights fights? I would like that. Gabe stands and follows Will out of engineering. As they cross the lounge towards the hatch leading to the bridge, Will asks, Did the Peacekeepers mistreat you, or any of their droids for that matter? Gabe turns his head, looking down at Will. Sometimes, but not often. It was common to reprogram the inhibitor key and force droids to fight each other for sport. Inhibitor key? The inhibitor key is a device inside each droid. It is essentially the ownership key. Once keyed with specific command codes and inserted into a droid, the droid cannot override anything contained on the key. Tapping on his chest, Gabe adds, Droids are also unable to remove their or another droid's key. Do you have one? Will leans forward, eyeing Gabe's chest. I did. The ensign who smuggled me off the command carrier removed it, for some reason. I suspect it was part of his agreement with Xarrix. Had it been present when I powered on, I would have attempted to escape and return to the Peacekeepers by any means necessary. He smiles at Will. When I created this body, I did not include an inhibitor port. Will nods, smiling back. Smart. Gabe nods. Yes. Pillow talk. Are all humans like you? Cynthia asks from beside him, this time in his quarters. What do you mean? Exceptional in bed? Will grins. The answer is no. He thinks a bit, then adds. But also no in general. We come in lots of colors, sizes, and shapes. Different political leanings, religious leanings. Come to think of it, we're more alike than anything. Sometimes for the worse. She tuts. I meant messy. She gestures to the rest of the room. You're a grown man. Ouch. He looks around, but fair. I've slacked a little on the cleaning thing. I've been a bit preoccupied. She slaps a hand against his chest. No excuse. You can't have people over and expect them to not be grossed out. You don't seem to mind. Will grunts as a sharp furry elbow strikes his ribs. Okay, no argument, I'll clean the place up. So, your world isn't united under one government? Will laughs. Oh God, no. I mean, we've made strides. The United Nations is the strongest it's ever been. But there are still plenty of non-aligned nations. Some out of disinterest, others because they have desires to overthrow the more powerful nations. If the GC ever approach your people, you know the planet has to be united under a single planetary government, Cynthia says. Yeah, I think Earth is a long way from GC membership. He shrugs. Who knows, though? Maybe finding life outside our system would be the kick in the pants humanity needs to get its act together. When his companion doesn't answer, Will changes gears. Does the treatment of droids bother you? Well, this took a turn. She turns and props herself up on an elbow. Sort of. My planet, Tyr, has laws that give synthetic intelligence, droids, certain civil rights. I didn't know that. Gabe mentioned that certain worlds were like that, but not enough. He's not wrong. What you saw in the Berserker isn't that uncommon, especially on the more backwater worlds like Wardlow 3. The GC has done an outstanding job of keeping droids from getting even the smallest rights. Companies like Farsight and other droid manufacturers certainly aren't helping either. Sighing, she looks Will in the eyes. Why? I had an earpiece in the last time I was aboard the Berserker. The crew heard almost everything. God, you're dumb. Hey, Will starts, but a fur-covered finger covers his lips. If Xarrix or Jarella had caught on, it'd be you on that wreck. Not to mention the trauma you likely caused your metal friend. We don't keep secrets from each other. Then he shakes his head. Yeah, Gabe took it really hard. I'm not sure what to do about it. He falls back on the bed, looking up at the ceiling. That intake looks like it needs cleaning too, he observes. He coughs once. So yeah, I need to ask you something. She looks down at him, one cat-like ear quirked. You switch topics like a drunlop changes phases. Will makes a face, processing what she just said, then shrugs. What's the deal with these ships? What's Xarrix up to? What are bioweapons doing here and where are they? Now both ears are laying flat against her head. What do you mean? We, heard you talking to Lorath the other day. How? You hacked my quarters? Installed surveillance? She's out of bed now, grabbing clothes from the floor. Will sits up. Can you blame us? He spreads his hands. Looks like it was warranted after all, so what's up? There's more to this than salvaging some derelict ships. As she opens the hatch to leave his quarters, she flips him off. The hatch closes. That went well, Will mumbles, looking for his pants. What do you make of all this? Maxim and Zephyr are in bed, both looking up at the ceiling. Maxim turns to look at his companion. Which all of this do you mean? Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. The big Pelorian looks over at the love of his life. Working for Xarrix. Gabe's reaction to what Will saw aboard the Berserker. He pauses. His relationship with Cynthia. Oh, all of this. She hikes herself up on both elbows. I don't really have a strong opinion on working for Xarrix. We take some jobs that are horrible and some that aren't. This is the former. She reaches for a glass of water next to her pulse pistol on the bedside table. After a sip, she continues. The droid thing was bound to come up. Remember our discussion on Bray? I do. Did I tell you I spoke with Gabe after leaving Bray? You didn't. She gets up to walk to the bathroom and refill her glass. Over the running water, she asks, How'd that go? He gives me a run for my money in the Stoic department, that's for sure. But since his transformation and his time aboard the Siege Perilous, he's been less droid-like. He said it was because he was able to strip away a lot of the programming Farsight forces on droids to keep them docile and subservient. Maxim lifts the covers so she can get back in bed. I never really thought about that Farsight or the GC would put a code in place to enforce their will on the droids. He shrugs. But I guess that makes sense. When Zephyr doesn't say anything, he continues. I know you don't like her, but is it really any of our business who Will invites into his bed? At her look of disgust, he continues. Besides, poor guy's been damn near celibate for as long as we've known him. I'm surprised he hasn't gone insane. Zephyr shakes her head. Man. Always something. Salvage Team A is docked, Zephyr announces, as the small fleet of freighters and salvagers latch onto the large derelict directly ahead. It is the 12th derelict they've salvaged since starting the operation. A cough from behind Will causes everyone to turn. Cynthia is standing just inside the hatch. She looks down at her feet, then mumbles something. I'm sorry, Will says. She said they're alive, Bennie offers. Will turns to him, the question clear on his face. The Braylac shrugs. Just because humans have underdeveloped senses. You don't even have ears, Will mutters, then turns back to Cynthia. What are alive? The ships, the Tigran woman answers. Not all of us advertise our sensory organs like humans do, Bennie quips. Oh, Drin, Maxim says. We've been down this road before, recently. Cynthia shakes her head. Not like that dreadnought thing. Like us. Come again? Will says. Is there a difference? Zephyr asks. Cynthia walks over and takes a seat at the station she's been occupying since the mission started. They're biomechanical. Some type of giant creatures, living starships. We call them behemoths, because of their size. They're in some type of hibernation state. The teams are going aboard and lobotomizing them, then taking manual control. That's why it's taking so long. The salvagers have had to map out the neural pathways as they cut them open. That's grotesque, Zephyr says in a low voice. Truly, Will agrees. What the hell, Cynthia? She shrugs. What you said last night got me thinking. She looks Will in the eye. I'm not okay with what they're doing. I wasn't before, but I've learned to not look too hard at what Xarrix gets into. I've been in this line of work so long, I've gotten good at mentally separating myself from it. She smiles shyly. I guess you're rubbing off on me. He does that, Maxim says. A shower will help. Man, it's always something, Will grouses. Can't we have a few months of just boring-ass work that pays well? Emphasis on boring, Bennie says. So now what? Maxim looks from Will to Cynthia, then at Bennie. You have to ask. We stop this. The way we stop everything. He's grinning. By blowing things up? Will asks. I mean, we do blow things up a lot. Maxim is nodding. Exactly. Cynthia sighs. I've been down this road before. Will laughs. To be clear, I didn't cause your building to explode. Uh-huh. It was Lorath, Will protests. Zephyr clears her throat. So, what do we do? Let's go pay our boss and his boss a visit, Will says, smiling. Docking clamps locked. Good seal on the airlock, Bennie reports from the bridge. Will looks at the group assembled in the armory, Zephyr, Maxim, and Cynthia. Let's do this, he says. Zephyr looks at Cynthia. Don't shed in that armor, it's mine. Cynthia makes a purring noise. Explains why it's so big. Before Zephyr can react, the Tigrant turns and heads toward the airlock. Maxim and Will exchange a look and follow after her. Sitting on the bridge of the Butcher, Lorath's wrist comm vibrates a pattern she knows well. Excuse me, Captain Sol. Without waiting for the diminutive pirate to answer, she gets up and leaves the bridge, thankful to be away from the pervasive smell of Folic Sol's first officer. Entering her quarters, she lifts her arm, activating the comlink. They know, Xarrix says from the small screen on her forearm. Sitting down at the desk set into the bulkhead, she swipes on the screen, and Xarrix's image moves to the larger display on the desktop unit. It was bound to happen, I suppose. Will isn't nearly as dumb as he looks. The skilled second-in-command looks at her boss. I wonder how, though. Cynthia. Excuse me? She leans toward the screen. Will, that damned human corrupted her. Xarrix leans back. She was such a valuable asset. How? Slept with her. His face shows just how disgusted the idea is to him. Damn it, I invested a lot in her training. That idiot owes us. Xarrix smiles. As it happens, we'll get to exact a price from the loss of our associate sooner rather than later. They're planning to storm the Berserker. Bold. Surely Will knows how many armed guards and mercenaries are on board. He does, or at least he should, having been aboard, but... Xarrix makes an expansive gesture. Humans. I hope they don't leave their home system anytime soon. Gods help us all. Indeed. At any rate, it's time to contain our band of misfits, it seems. Understood. Lorath reaches over to the terminal and brings up a menu. On it is the Ghost and the Butcher. She selects the former and activates the command. I'll assemble a crew.